Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Constantine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to talk about how to write about performance measures. Now, this is a webinar that happens to be associated to build on an example assignment from Nursing 622. However, there are many programs where you do performance assessments of different sorts, where you're using a pre-built measure or survey instrument or other information gathering tool, and the basic principles will apply there as well. So if you are doing a performance measurement, say in our Master of Business Administration program, don't worry, the same principles apply. Because it's the start of a new term, we'll say a little bit about the Writing Center services, and if you're watching this on replay and you're no stranger to the Writing Center, feel free to skip ahead about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Alright, so the Online Writing Center works with students at just about all of the online programs at ACU Dallas or ACU Online. All of our services are free to students. We work with students through webinars such as this, through creating resources like templates to help format your papers or terminal projects, with providing examples, explanations, discourses on different topics, as well as doing writing consultations. You can sign up for two basic types, an asynchronous appointment or a real-time appointment. An asynchronous appointment is something that's not in real time. You schedule an appointment slot. By the time that slot rolls around, you upload a copy of your paper, any special requests for feedback. We look at it and send you feedback generally within 24 hours. If it's on, say, the Monday that papers are due, we get you the feedback faster. And if it's something on a holiday weekend, it might take a little bit more time, but normal is less than 24 hours. We also have real-time appointments. If you want to ask a lot of back and forth questions, if there are things you're wondering how to do that you'd like to see the screen, you might select the real-time Zoom appointment option. Or if you have more general questions and it will help you focus if you're not looking at the computer screen, you might request a phone appointment. Generally, it's possible to go back and forth, and I've had students who start with a phone appointment, and I'm like, would you like to see that? And then if they're near a computer, they hop on Zoom and we take it from there. So that's not a problem, but you might want to focus, or for scheduling reasons, you might prefer to get the asynchronous appointment. Some students also tell me that just for managing the flow of feedback, if the asynchronous appointment, the manner in which they get the notes, lets them do divide and conquer. Okay, let me cross this off, done with that, cross this off, rather than feeling a little overloaded. So it's totally a question of preference, and many students will go back and forth depending on the assignment and what they're looking for. The basic process, if you head to my.acu.edu, there's a resource link to the Online Writing Center, and you just follow the different instructions there, but you'll get to our scheduling system, WC Online, sign up for a time. By the time that slot rolls around, upload a copy of your paper. If you have it ready, and you're not going to be working on it before the appointment time, you can just upload it right away. Otherwise, if you have an update, you can just send that to us via email, and we'll look at it, and if it's an asynchronous appointment, you'll get feedback in normally less than 24 hours. If it's a real-time appointment, you'll get your feedback right away. I do want to call attention to this feature on our Writing Center webinars page. If you scroll down past the calendar schedule, you will see that we have a tabbed guide to different programs with the webinars that tie into that. So for example, if you went to NURS D&P, you would see this webinar listed. As soon as this is done, I'm going to upload the video. And so that'll be tagged under NURS 622, and you can find all the other things that we have, and we update that throughout the term as more webinars become available. You'll probably want to get a copy of our APA course paper template. If you don't have one already, you'll see me using that. You can watch our videos on our YouTube channel for ease of access on the go, and we have a blog where we explore various writing topics. So our objectives today, to understand the Nursing 622 Week 1 Assignment 1, the evidence-based practice or quality improvement performance measure. Let me just give a quick note here. When you are working on proofreading materials, if you see something, the best time to fix it is right then and there because you won't forget. So if you look at this first option, you'll see that there's a missing piece of punctuation. And if I see it now and say, okay, I'll get that later, I will probably forget unless you make a note to it. Or I can right now literally press escape, and add that in, and the correction is done. So a good habit while you are working on your paper, unless you're following a idea through and you really need the focus, something like that is a very quick correction to do. And I would recommend doing it then and there. Now, if you find that you are then proofreading the whole document and that it's hard to get out of that zone, then I would say maybe take a moment and do that, or make a note to do that later so that you can focus on the task at hand. All right, so we'll be exploring this assignment from Nursing 622. Then we'll be talking about how to write about performance measures in APA style, and we'll finish with the discussion of outline and drafting. So let's take a look at this assignment now. So again, this is coming from Nursing 622, which is the Interprofessional Teams course. And one of the goals of using APA style is to communicate clearly and unambiguously, especially if you're working across disciplinary lines. So there might be things that if you're with a group of nurses, you might leave some details out because you all know about that. If you're talking about how to run a mainline catheter, that's something you know by the time you get through nursing school. Actually, much earlier than that. But if you're working with, say, the MBA who's come in from a total business background, they might need a little bit of explanation. And so with APA style, we want to be writing for a slightly more general audience than you might be doing in your office workday practice. All right. So if we look at this, we see this is coming in the sequence. It's building on things in Nursing 612. In this course, meaning 622, you will identify a performance measure tracked by your organization, which will be utilized to complete a culminating leading quality healthcare initiatives assignment on Week 7. Several leading healthcare organizations have identified performance measures. These are evidence-based best practices to improve care and reduce variances in care. Now, evidence-based is something that will be coming back again and again in this program. And I would say if you learn now what that means and can comfortably describe it and reference it, then you will be doing yourself a good favor because you'll be justifying a lot of things later on evidence-based grounds. All right, so the instructions continue. Here, for this assignment, here's a list of acceptable performance measures. We have the CMS core performance measures for pneumonia, the NDNQI patient falls measure, the American Heart Association congestive heart failure core performance measures, the National Patient Safety Goals, and if you're using those because the NPSGs are very broad, you want to use at least 2 ways to identify patients. And there's some examples here. And yeah, you could certainly use patient's name and date of birth. That is the standard at every hospital I've been to. They ask me my name and my date of birth. It's a standard for a reason, so don't feel you have to reinvent the wheel. But if you have something that you think would work even better, tell us that and tell us why. All right, you may select one of the items above for this course, meaning you can pull from this list, or you can propose another, but if you're proposing another, you need to have a discussion to confirm that you can use that. And then you need to tell us the name of the performance measure you're using, the name of the organization that created it, a rationale for using it, and ground this with at least one peer-reviewed reference within the last 5 years using the APA format. And then there's a note that you might want to review some stuff from the Nursing 612 course. If we look at the rubric, it's very basic. It's, hey, did you submit this? Did you put the pieces of information they asked for? All right, now this is 250 words rationale, so that's about a double-spaced page. So this won't be terribly long. Just want to make sure that you do all the things that they ask. All right. Well, let's talk about how to write about performance measures. The first thing you want to do is to identify the performance measure. And that's not just because that's the first prompt here, but also because we want to be specific. There are many different versions of things, and some things that are exploring related concepts, and even across different disciplines, sometimes identical names for things that do very different assessments. So the basic components of identifying a performance measure are going to be, okay, what is it called? where can you find it, which, this being APA style, we can distill down to the author information and the URL, and when it was published. 2 and 3 kind of go together. So the who wrote it or who created this version of it is going to be our author. The access information will almost always be a URL these days. When was it published? Well, there are some of these things that change. They're updated year to year. You may have noticed that the National Patient Safety Goals there, those are the ones for 2019. Well, I was reading a similar thing that had goals that were usually updated every year or so, and then the pandemic happened. And then they skipped to 2023. And those are coming out soon. And because there may be new things that we were tracking, like 2019, we wouldn't have been tracking COVID. You want to be specific about the version that you were referring to, hence the when was it published part. Now, for example, let's say we were using the Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set, or HEDIS. Where can you find it? Well, this is published, created by the National Committee for Quality Assurance. Here's a link to the measures that I want to use. And when was it published? Well, that's going to be 2020. And here, again, if you see something that you need to replace a placeholder, as you will be doing if you follow our outlining technique, when you see, oh, I need to update that, just make the change, and it's done. So you don't need to worry about it. That took literally seconds, even with my explaining what I was doing. So how would you introduce the performance measure? This is separate from how you're going to figure out the specific version. This is how you convey to your reader. Well, you can use a phrase that says, oh, this internal evaluation utilized, or will utilize if it hasn't taken place, this internal evaluation utilized the Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set. And then we introduce the acronym, HEDIS. And, oh, who wrote that? The National Committee for Quality Assurance. When was it published? 2020. Now, if you're doing this, keep in mind that instrument or measure names are capitalized in title case. In the instructions for this assignment, they're not all in title case, but as you're reformatting them in your paper for APA style, make sure they are. And that means, among other things, that any important word and any word with 4 more letters will get the first letter capitalized. When you are introducing abbreviation, make sure you give the full name first, followed by the abbreviation in parentheses, and then use the abbreviation thereafter instead of the full name. And if you are going to be introducing an abbreviation for an author name, that's fine. If it's the author part is outside the parentheses, it'll be exactly as you see it in the example there. If it's something where you're using the parentheses author, comma, date, citation format, that's fine. We'll just include the information in square brackets. So you can see we've updated the sentence in the previous slide. This internal evaluation utilized the Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set, parentheses, abbreviation for that, semicolon, and then the full author name. Then in square brackets, the abbreviation for the author name, and then 2020. And thereafter, I can just refer to it in and outside of parentheses as NHQA 2020. And why would you do this? Well, it helps you avoid having really long, distractingly long parenthetical notes after that first introduction. So if you see that a sentence is mostly being filled with parenthetical notes about the author information, then that's a good argument for having an abbreviation or two. Now, as for justifying the performance measure, there are a number of ways to do this, but some questions that are helpful to consider answering. What was this developed for? What was it designed to help address or improve? Who was this developed by? And by that, I don't mean, oh, so-and-so was a 21-year-old nurse at this hospital. That's distracting details. But saying it was developed by a working nurse, okay, all right. Or whatever other context you think is important about who they were. To answer how or where this is being used. Is it the industry standard thing? Okay, that would be a good justification for using it. How has this been validated? Has it been used in a lot of previous research? Has it been compared to other measures? What were the results? And as you're giving us information to justify this choice, remember, you want to be specific, only include details that are clearly relevant, spell out your argument, and make sure you're showing cause and effect. So at this point, I'd suggest grabbing a copy of our APA course paper template. Now, some reminders. Use the wording in the prompt. Look for ways to link with the culminating Week 7 assignment, the one that this is building and leading towards. And remember that practicality and ease of use are virtues. If the organization is already using it, there will be much less pain, trouble, and training necessary to keep using it. Similarly, it's something that is used because it is easy to use. There may be more exhaustive or in-depth things that are just not practical to implement. So make sure that you provide a justification, and if it's used for a lot of things, or it's recognized for that, that's fine. All right, so let's take a look at that template here. Now, in general, we recommend that students start with a title that is descriptive and accurate, and not worry about it being poetic. You can always update the title later. But if we were to copy and paste the title of this assignment here, we would see that there is one thing here. There's a decision to be made, evidence-based practice or quality of improvement performance measure. And they're not quite the same thing, so I would pick one, and for the sake of argument here, I will call this quality improvement performance measures. And then I'll just say for improving X. X will be whatever thing it is that you choose there. You can fill in the rest of the information there. Whatever it is, make sure we have the title matching here. So I'm going to just grab this title that I've placed there. And let's go ahead and we'll remove this placeholder text here. Now, if we look at the instructions for this assignment, we will see that there is a basic outline that's given to you. Okay, identify a performance measure tracked by your organization, which will be utilized to complete this thing in the Leading Quality Healthcare Initiatives assignment. All right, so we're going to identify a performance measure, and if we look here, we see we have an outline for how to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and add these instructions to our document. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to italicize this so we can clearly see what's the instructions versus whatever you're adding here. Now, it is totally fair in APA 7th edition to refer to things with I and my to clarify what you're referring to. Now, you could also refer to the organization by name, but because you are going to be doing a quality improvement project design involving this organization that you are affiliated with, my organization clarifies a lot of things very concisely, which is a virtue in APA style. And I don't know what the exact performance measure you're going to be using, but when we're looking at, okay, responding to the prompt, we know you need to tell them what it's called, and it'd be very helpful to know what it's being used for. So this information is going to be going in there. We're going to have a citation that needs to be in there, and okay, that's good enough to start the paper. Let's look at what has to go after that. Alright, now this is going to be taken care of in that previous one, so when you're done you can just cross it out like this. The name of the organization that created that, that's going to be in the, not necessarily in the citation information, because sometimes these are bought and published by other things. But if we look at this, we say, okay, if this is covered by this part, let's go ahead and add this as a sub-bullet. And for the sake of an example here, I'm going to use the one that I used in the slides here. So here, I'm just going to paste that in. So my organization currently uses the Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set, all the citation and acronym introduction, performance measure to assess whatever it is we're doing it. Now, you'll have to check to make sure that the name of the organization under which it has been published as the author is one that created this version. And assuming that's the case, okay, this was created by and then have a citation for wherever you got that information. It might be the exact same thing as you have earlier. It might be something different. Now, for the rationale here, well, give us some reasons. And you can find some, you can ask people in your organization. And if you're going to be citing someone who told you that, then you could have a citation for the person. And if you are going to be using a scholarly resource here, well, let's take a look at how to select that. Now, if we go to the ACU, so I'm here at the distance learning portal here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug my string here. That's the organization name, and I want to have peer reviewed, and I also want to have the exact measure that I'm using. So that would be HEDIS, and I'm just going to use the abbreviation here. And I've selected peer reviewed because I want to have information that is going to serve as an appropriate reference. Now, you can see here, there's a lot of literature here. I have found more than 4,000 articles that reference this. And so part of my justification for using this is, hey, it's used a lot. Or you might have a particular context that you're looking for. In this case, military training facilities, and say, oh, yes, it has been used in that setting already. Check the abstract, see if that's backing up what you're wanting to do. And as a reminder, you do want to look at the abstracts before you read the whole article to see if it's relevant here. You can see, okay, so they're checking for a particular type of cancer. If you're working that kind of ward, you're like, oh, yes, it's been used in that. You might be looking at the military environment. You say, oh, it's been tested across a wide variety of sites, and look at this difference in compliance. I mean, the difference between 67.9 and 84% is pretty good. So you might be referencing something like this and saying, oh, that's how it's been used. Here's an example of a study that justifies using that. Or this author recommended it for this context. Now, we can see the abstract even gives us as this statement, this framing statement from the author or authors. Oh, the inclusion has a potential to do this. So if you find something like that, recommending it for your context, that's great. And you might have something that's recommending it for a similar context, something that's close enough to say, okay, that looks like there's merit for trying to do this, or to support doing the kinds of things we are, because it's also worked in similar settings. All right, now if we look at that framing assignment, if you're saying, well, I'm not sure how to justify this because I don't know where this is heading, well, remember the instructions have advised you to take a look at the Week 7 assignment, Leading Quality Healthcare Initiatives. And you see they're talking about achieving an objective or performance measure. So what is it that you're trying to do? What kind of results do you want to get in the performance measure when you're done? What are you getting now? And you can look and see, okay, we just looked at the abstract for a study, an article write-up that talks about the results that they got after implementation. And so that's one of those things showing a model for perhaps assessing and using the information to inform results. You can look at this and see in the rubric, one of the reasons you want to be clearly identifying and defining that performance measure, you're going to be using this again, referencing it at the end of the term. And this information is also something that you're going to be using in this paper. So, again, if you're looking for a rationale, one thing you might be using is comparing to, okay, how is this being used on a larger scale? Now, if your organization is using it already, there should be access to some data. You don't need that specific data, but describing how it's there, like if you've got 5 years of using this metric, that's a good basis of data comparing. That gets you a couple years pre-COVID, a couple years during, and then whatever else is going on. We also have auditing, and sometimes there are materials that are available for that. You might have key stakeholders who are on board with this or have been using it. And so here are some ideas for ways to connect things and guide the specific rationale that you give for the current assignment based on what you know is coming, what you know will be relevant and helpful for you, as well as giving a concise and focused argument for the purposes of this paper. So let's do a quick recap of what we've looked at today. So we started with a discussion of the specific assignment, the Nursing 622 Week 1 Assignment 1, Evidence-Based Practice or Quality Improvement Performance Measure assignment. Then we talked about how to write about performance measures. We looked specifically at how to take the instructions and start translating them into an argument. This isn't going to be a terribly long paper, but you want to do these things well, you want to do them right because it's coming right back at the end of the semester. And the better that you do the work of collecting this information now, the easier that week 7 assignment will be because you already have laid out justifications that you can take and expand and build upon. And you'll have found the relevant information. And finally, we looked at how to find an article to be able to go and start from the distance learning portal here. Start with the search string, some parameters like limiting to peer-reviewed. And you might even say, oh, I want to go ahead and add another layer on. I want to have things that is from the last few years because, in this case, 1993, well, a lot's changed in U.S. healthcare. So let's say your cutoff is going to be 2016, after which basically all of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, depending on how you prefer to refer to it, was implemented. Okay, so any provisions that are in force, most part took place by then. So let's make that a cutoff. And you see that that actually doesn't change our results terribly much. We have here going from 2016, and we put that in, and we still have almost 1,000 results. So while yes, that is less than a quarter of where we started with, that is far more than you need for this paper. So feel free to look for something that's even more specific, like the particular institutional model or the specialty area, because remember, this is coming back. You'll be working on this, and so it might as well be something that's exactly what you want, because we have a lot of room to narrow this down, and you're not bound by just the first thing that came up in the results. All right. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. But remember, you want to use the wording in the prompt, look for links with the next assignment, or the week 7 assignment. Remember, there are many virtues, including practicality, ease of use, history of use, and other things that you can refer to. And you're writing about your organization, you can ask people and find out why they did that or what they like, and include that as part of your justification Just make sure you have that at least one scholarly reference that's required. All right. If you're working on this paper, you want feedback on your draft, feel free to schedule an appointment or to check out our resources on the Online Writing Center website. And with that, have a great rest of your day.